Welcome to a new daily top AskReddit video. Today's topic:
what is badly named, and what is a better name for it? Dentures should be substitutes. If I were a dentist, I would make this joke all the time. Dentist once asked me, "Do you want us to use the laughing gas?" I said, "Yes. I've heard your jokes before. I'm gonna need it." He laughed a little, then said, "Not smart to insult the person about to drill into your teeth." Weather forecast is boring. Weather prophecy is awesome. Atmospheric foretelling. Precipitation prognostication. Why is a group of squid called a shoal when it should be called a squad? A squid squad. Nice. A crow crew. A whale wall. A swan swarm. A bat batch. A lobster cluster. And of course, a group of groupers. A murder of crows goes so unfathomably hard, though it can stay. Abbreviation should be a much shorter word. Dyslexia should also be easier to spell. Lisp shouldn't make me lisp. And why isn't palindrome a palindrome? Why is a fear of palindromes ibophobia? Question mark. Jet ski, dumb name. Obviously it is a motorcycle. Wow, am I high, or does this make more sense? Pork no los dos. I'm not the first to say it, but pickup artists and garbage men should swap titles. Lisp should be renamed to anything without an S in it. Lithp, yes. It's a cruel joke of a word. Same with stutter, 3 effings tease people. Now you see me too. Should have been now you don't. It's insane that it isn't called that. Now you see me, now you don't, was so obvious that I was expecting a sequel by that name before the first movie even came out. Like, surely they planned for that. Right, it's nuts. Bonkers. Unbelievable. Inconceivable. I see you found my missing thesaurus. Not only was I sad when I lost it, I was also sad. Twitter is Twitter. Just fix it back, Elon. It should be Zitter, pronounced shitter, to be more accurate. No, the official name is now just X, the social media app formerly known as Twitter. I laugh every time I see something on a legit website that says X, Twitter. Like it's so stupid that Washington Post doesn't have time for your bullshit. A driveway should be a parkway, and a parkway should be a driveway. And cookies and bacon should switch, since you bake cookies but cook bacon. I bake bacon. The word bacon comes from the Proto-Germanic word bakon, which means back meat. The word cookie comes from the Dutch word koekje, which means little cake. Dutch immigrants brought the treat to America in the 17th century and introduced the word in the late 18th century. So yeah, from etymological perspective, it makes perfect sense. Blame the verbs we use, not the nouns. Besides, cooking, the verb, is Latin in origin from coquus, meaning literally just making food, and baking is from the English word baken, or Proto-Germanic word bakana. Cooking just means combining and heating, so you could say you're cooking cookies. And bacon is just cured back meat, you can heat it in any way you see fit. You could put in the oven, fry it, etc. Hemorrhoids should be asteroids OBV. Or should that be asteroids? Otto Preminger wrote his own biography and failed to title it Autobiography. Once in a lifetime pun, and he just threw it away. At least Corey Feldman did it right with choreography. Astronomers should be called scientists. Scientist here. I think I'll use this one. Astrologers, scientologists. I keep seeing people say that contractions should be birthquakes. It took me way too long to get that. I kept thinking contractions, won't, didn't, will, it's, your. Iceland and Greenland. From what I understand of it, Greenland was basically a name that Eric the Red gave the place. He used it to frame the land as great as to persuade people to move there. A real asshole if there ever was one. I thought he deliberately named them backwards to get the English to invade the frozen wasteland country instead of the actually livable one. I still don't get how inflammable means flammable. Quote, flammable actually means inflammable, and it was adopted more recently due to fire safety precautions and people generally misunderstanding the function of inflammable's prefix, think, inflame, not, unflame, thus thinking warnings on products were actually assurances that they wouldn't set on fire. So actually this is a good answer to the question, it's just already been renamed. Hi Dr. Nick. Same with habitable, inhabitable, uninhabitable. Butterflies should be flutterbys. Krav Maga. It should be called Jiu-Jitsu. In the novel, Lamb, the Gospel according to Biff, Christ's childhood pal, he credits the Messiah with the invention of judo, or way of the Jew. W really is more of a double V than it is a double U. In France it is double versus. Okay, thanks, mister. The entire language of Spanish. IIRC French calls it double V, but in a really cool and snarky French way. S. Faux pas greater than stepdad. I never had a real ladder, all I had was a stepladder. Toothbrush should really be called a teeth brush. Thapeak for yourself. I just have a separate brush per tooth like a rational American. Any bacon alternative that is not named Facon is an abomination. Uranus. Yeah, it sounds like what it sounds like, but it's also the only planet not named after a Roman god. In fact, it's not named after a god at all, it's named after a titan. It's named after the Greek deity of the sky, and the father of the first generation of titans. It would almost be one thing if it was the last planet or something, but nope. Then we have Neptune, which is named after the Roman god of the sea. This leaves Uranus as the etymological sore thumb of the solar system. The better name would be Celis, because that's the Roman equivalent, and it doesn't sound like an inappropriate body part. I was always a fan of just Anglo-ifying back to Greek phonetic spelling, Uranos. Yes, comrade. I'm a huge Shakespeare fan, and only last year, by accident, I noticed all of Uranus's rings are named after characters in his plays. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/rings_of_Uranus. I think those are the moons. As far as I know, the rings still just have letters, but yeah, all the moons are named after Shakespeare characters. Not original, but I love the idea of butt dials being booty calls and dad bods being father figures. Context is important because grammatically there is no difference between, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned," and, "Sorry, Daddy, I've been naughty." This whole thread is like a Seinfeld intro. Why do they call it Ovaltine? They should call it Round Time. Blowjob doesn't involve blowing, and for most people it's not their job. So, slurp effort. Drool hobby. Yeah, but suck favor doesn't roll off the tongue well. Not with that attitude. Scarecrows are no crows. They should be called crows cares. In Dutch they are vogelverschrikkers, aka bird scarers. That sounds so aggressive. In Spanish is the same way, espantapajaros, which translates to bird spooker. Bullfrogs, I'd call chuswazers. In a related vein, Aussie currency should be called dollaridos. 30-year-old Simpsons references alive and well. I see you've played knifey spoony before. A red onion is quite clearly a purple onion. Also, white grapes are green. A group of raccoons is called a gaze when the word heist is right there. This is a brand name, but there is a winter weather clothing company here in Canada called Moose Knuckles. An alternative would be literally anything else. Right next to Camel Toes Sportswear. Rhode Island isn't an island. Fun fact, until 2020 it was officially called State of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations. Another fun fact, Rhode Island is an island, but it's more commonly called Aquidneck Island by locals, and is home to Newport. But the whole state became known as Rhode Island because no one was going to say the whole name, and Providence Plantations, the mainland, has connotations. Rhodeland. Narwhals should be renamed tunicorns. Boob sweat, greater than humidities. Mountain Dew. The snooze button should be renamed the 5 more minutes of denial button. The cope button. As someone who has lived with people who can't just wake up at the first alarm, goddamn, I hate people who can't just wake up at the first alarm. My husband will hit snooze for over an hour. I cannot wrap my head around it. Just set your alarm an hour later and actually get up when it goes off. Unicorn cause apparently unihorn makes too much sense. Uni is a Latin prefix. Corn is the Latin word for horn. Hence cornucopia equals horn of plenty. Edit, spelling. Well then what would we call rhinoceros? Triceratops junior. Horniphant. Head and Shoulders should have a soap called Knees and Toes. Shuttlecock. Actually, that's an awesome name. Here in NZ we have a tradition of naming our sports teams using the color black. The rugby team is the All Blacks, hockey are the Black Sticks, basketball are the Tall Blacks, etc. Can you guess what our badminton team is called? Yep, the Black Cocks. Sounds like a pretty sweet place to live besides the orcs and shit. Glove compartment, it should be extra fast food napkin compartment. The glove compartment is inaccurately named. And everybody knows it, so I'm proposing a swift orderly change. That song is the first thing I thought of when seeing the op question. Daylight savings. Should be, pointlessly mess up everyone's sleep cycle. Biannual fuck you. Turn it on then never turn it back off. Losing that hour of daylight in the evenings is far worse for my mental health than having the sun be up while I drive to work. The only people who like that shit are the same ones who wake up at 4 a.m. and think everyone else should too. For all intents and purposes, Starlink really should have been called Skynet if it wasn't already taken. Mini corn dogs should be called corn puppies! Exclamation mark. Headphones should be head speakers. Fun fact, phone means sound. Telephone meaning far sound. Hence why you also have things like saxophone and homophone. Beheading should be called deheading. Not sure how that one slipped. Fencing, the sport. Swashbuckling, has been just right there for all these centuries. Fencing, from fence, shortened from defense. Swashbuckler is actually less appropriate than it might seem for quite a few reasons. From a strict etymological standpoint, the word itself directly references the use of sword and buckler, a kind of small, center-grip shield. The use of a secondary implement for defensive reasons very common early on in the development of the basic concepts that would one day lead to the sport. It was required because a rapier is not the petite weapon with a 3-foot blade that we tend to think of, but a rather large and cumbersome weapon that might be as much as 5 feet long. The design advanced through the years, getting shorter relatively quickly in designs such as a court sword and, eventually, into variations of the small sword. As the design changed, so did the style. Footwork went from circular to linear and the secondary implement became less necessary. By the time the sport was, a sport, the buckler was centuries out of style. There is a second reason as well, in that swashbuckling is showy. A swashbuckler was basically an armed man throwing about the fact he was armed and being generally obnoxious. The sport with its rather rigorous rules of conduct do not allow this sort of thing. More interesting is that the international governing body of the sport, the Fédération Internationale d'Escrime, FI, uses the French word escrime for fencing. That word, much like the English one, is derived from the word scrim, or to shield, cover, or defend. All three words place the emphasis on the defensive nature inherent to the sport, but swashbuckler is quite literal in a way that I don't think actually works well. I mean, if you go into fencing hoping for swashbuckling, you're going to be disappointed. If you want to swashbuckle, you need to learn stage fighting, which is meant to be big and showy and fun rather than small, subtle, and tediously effective. That, or join the SCA or HAMA depending on what level of rigor you want in the sport, as those do have sword and shield competitions.